Level Up Expo has been running in Vegas for over a decade. It's steadily grown over the years, and 2025 was no exception. This technically wasn't my first one, as I went back in 2020 before the world caught on fire. I didn't really do much, I was just there for a card game tournament. However, this time I was there for a little bit of everything, and there was a lot on offer. As far as cons go, this is a big one. According to the internet, there was 120,000 attendees this year and last year. There's a ton of cosplay, huge exhibitor hall with the artist alley, lots of gaming events. They had some esports events with really big prize pools. We'll break all this down in a sec more specifically, but real quick, let's talk about the most important topic of all, myself. For anyone who's new around these parts, I've been doing content creation for a few years at this point. I'm really heavily pushing conventions now. It's something that's interested me for a while, and I think it has broad enough appeal that hopefully I can make some content that a lot of people will appreciate. If you want to like, share, sub, spread the love, it means a lot. It's about the only way to get ahead at this point. Basically what I'm trying to do here is, if you were not at the event, I want you to be able to feel like you have a sense of what it was like to be at the event. If you were at the event, I want you to be able to go back and relive some of those wonderful sense memories, the cheering of the crowds at the panels, the lightening of your wallets when you went through the merch areas, and the aroma of the Smash players. No further ado required, let's get to it. I'll get the logistics out of the way so we can get to the fun stuff. I showed up early Friday morning. There was a red entrance and a blue entrance. I believe the red one was where you could pick up your badge if you hadn't done it already on Thursday. They were on opposite sides of the building, and the building is huge. It was like an 8-minute speed walk to get there, and I'm pretty adept at walking. Once you got inside, the exhibitors were on one side of the bottom floor, and it was massive. It was right by the artist alley. In the middle, there's also a lounge area. Early in the day, it was pretty good to just chill out in, but later on in the day, it was a really hoppin' social spot. The free play arcade took up half of one of the entrances. There were some indie game devs on the opposite side there. A bit further down in the middle, there was an escalator that took you to what I would call the main area, I guess. The first thing you would see once you got up was 3 big screens for the esports. You saw a sea of monitors that was for like the people playing pools, or there were some set up for casuals. Going a little further in, there were some free play consoles set up. There was also a wrestling ring. In the back, you had the computer gaming area. You had Senpai squads. It's basically like wrapped cars. And then further back, you had a bunch of the like panel and guest rooms. There are also guest spots on the first floor with like zigzag line dividers for the meet and greets and autographs and things of that nature. Yeah, the panel rooms were at the back. That's where you would see like the longest lines out of the whole convention. That's actually how I first noticed them, were one of the lines for one of the panels. In addition, there were cosplay meetup areas strewn about. They'd have little signs that says like cosplay area A or something. And if you looked, there was an app and a pamphlet. And the app had basically the schedule for everything. It even had a cool little create your own schedule feature on it. The pamphlet had the locations of everything, including like maps of the vendors and stuff specifically. There was also the website. The website did not have as much info. It was really partial, but we'll get to that later. If you're a gamer, you'll know that some conventions don't have a ton to offer you, while others only have gaming to offer. One might have a Settlers of Catan open play session and then a pinball machine, and another will just be rows and rows of tables with like 2 vendor tables off to the side. In the past, I would only go to a con if there was a tournament for a game system that I played, and that would be my main focus. Because what's the point in being in a large group of people unless you have an excuse to be toxically competitive, am I right? This one, there were so many gaming options, it was ridiculous. The free play arcade was huge. I could not think of a rhythm game that was not represented, and I saw several I'd never seen before, which is rare for me. By midday, when the crowd was at its peak, you'd see people interacting over arcade cabinets just like the good old days. For fighting games, they had all the big ones, including 3 Marvel 2 cabinets, CVS 2, SoulCal, Third Strike, and a lot more. The sticks and buttons were immaculately maintained and silky smooth, which is another complaint I often run into with modern cabs, especially free play ones. If I was local and had zero interest in anything else at this con, the arcade alone would be worth it. We're not done with the free gaming yet, though. There is also a spread of retro consoles, ranging from common and nostalgic to obscure, with a ton of major titles represented. The Retro World Series had some absolute banger tournaments for commonly seen titles like Smash Bros. And Double Dash, but also pulled out gems like Puzzle Fighter and Sonic the Fighters. Retro tournaments do a great job of being accessible for casuals that want to play a game they like, or bringing together folks who are passionate about obscure systems and may never otherwise get to interact with other fans as hardcore as they are. This con was the first time I've ever had an in-depth strategy discussion about Crazy Taxi with somebody in person. I got in a bunch of rounds of Marvel 2 with folks walking up, then somebody picked Servbot, and I knew I was about to get humbled. Rest in peace, my win streak. Let's switch gears to the big leagues of esports. Vegas is no stranger to large competitive tournaments, and the Expo did not come to play in that regard. Rather, it came to play while simultaneously also not having come to play. The FGC big boys and a few new kids on the block were represented, with prize pools ranging into the thousands. Guilty Gear, Sparking Zero, Marvel 3, Fatal Fury, Smash Ultimate, and some others were part of these events. The roster of commentators was extremely impressive, with lots of recognizable names and faces. I even got the chance to give Justin a few tips, to which he seemed very grateful for, but I like to help people out, I'm a humble dude like that. Last, but arguably not least, there were the card tournaments. One Piece and Yu-Gi-Oh! Were the standouts for me, but others were represented as well. PPG, otherwise known as Pro Play Games to those outside of the cardboard cults, ran smooth events throughout the weekend. Props, because I loved seeing the pairings board clearly displayed and multiple round timers gave full visibility to all the players. There are also a ton of judges, which is important for keeping the event running smoothly. If you aren't someone who's done large card events, not knowing the round time or only having it displayed one direction can give a huge advantage to one player, and drawn-out judge calls can completely derail the schedule of an event. So good on them for having those things sorted out. I'm mostly going to let this section speak for itself with a little slideshow here, but I believe between the exhibitor hall, the artist alley, and the autograph areas, it took up about 2/3 of the total convention space. So many cool things like you would expect from a convention were represented in nearly every fandom imaginable. I'd love to say I was exaggerating, but it took me an hour just to walk through each aisle and film things before general entry. If I have to pick favorites, there was a retro gaming booth with an amazing selection, and this booth with lots of unique, cute art decals and pins. There are even some robots wandering around saying hi.
You think being me is fun? Well, you got it. I'm made up of hundreds of bolts, wires, and computer chips, and an assortment of electromagnetic impulses that makes me the wild and crazy bot that I am.
The list of special guests is way too massive for me to address everybody here. If you want to see the complete list, there is a link to the pamphlet in the description. I believe that has anything you could want to know in terms of the guest list. Some of the people I spoke to were coming in just for the panels, though. Like everything else discussed so far, the panels and workshops were running non-stop, I think between 7 or so different areas. As for what was on offer, lordy, there were options. Many were themed around voice acting and were interactive. Some covered specific shows, others touched on content creation and streaming. Got some bits and pieces of a few, but by far, and I think this isn't a controversial statement, the Hell of a Boss panels were insanely popular. I'll be uploading the entirety of one of them later, but here's a glimpse of some of the backstage from the first one, and a little bit extra from some of the others.
We're here to have including the star today.
YouTube is very, it's YouTube, and it has rules and it has restrictions, and we've had to censor many of our episodes. And I totally forgot to mention that, yeah, when you guys get the series on Amazon, it'll be totally uncensored. So you'll find that.
Not Robin from Teen Titans Go, because he has baby hands!
This is a topic that has been a growing interest for me, and I'm really excited to get to talk about it. This was probably the highest concentration of cosplayers I have seen at a convention. Roaming cosplayers were happy to take pics, and themed meetups were scheduled throughout the entire event. I got a lot of footage from the Marvel Rivals and Sonic meetups. There are a few different contests, such as the Hall contest and the Masquerade, which I'll get to in a second. First, I want to briefly touch on my relationship to cosplay and how my interest has peaked lately. Enjoy some pictures while I ramble. I want to go on record that I tagged as many of the creators as I could, but some either didn't give information or I was unable to collect it because they seemed like they were in a rush somewhere. If anybody wants to identify anyone who isn't tagged, feel free to sound off in the comments, but I did my best to respect crediting folks. So my earliest memories of interacting with the hobby were sharing a room at a Dallas convention in the mid-2000s with several Yu-Gi-Oh cosplayers. I was there for a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, but went to their show for support. It was really fun. I think there were maybe 80 people total in the room, and the skits were hilarious, but you could tell it wasn't really the main focus of the con. I'll get back to this in the vlog section, but I feel like the context will help here. Moving on to the Masquerade, without exaggeration, it was one of the most visually and artistically impressive live shows I've ever witnessed in my life. I've seen professional stage plays that felt less cohesive and organized than this. With a huge crowd in the main stage room, there was an energy that was only closely matched by the attendees of the Hell of a Boss panels and the wrestling fans. I've selected some snippets of performances to give a glimpse, but I'll upload the entirety of the show as well separately. Show crew had some awesome performances between setups, and there were a few first-time solo performances that absolutely smashed it. I'll say this point blank, if you come to LVL UP Expo, it's in the Cosplay Masquerade. I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but it shifted my soul in a positive way. After the event, everyone gathered in one of the most pure displays of community I've ever seen in a fandom, and there were tears of joy like I've never witnessed from a gaming competition. To say I was inspired is an understatement. I'm gonna file these under what I would call other attractions. That's not downplaying their importance or significance, it's more I just didn't know how else to group them together. Earlier I mentioned Senpai Squad. They had a bunch of anime wrapped cars in the upper floor. I really liked the Initial D themed one. A lot of people were using them as like backdrops for photo shoots, which was really cool. There's also a massive, like, I guess full-size wrestling ring, and it was really entertaining. Like, they had shows running throughout the weekend. Anytime there was a show, the seats were packed out and people were really getting into it. There were multiple times in the panels that the cheers from the wrestling fans and the announcements and stuff were actually bleeding into the panels. And I can only imagine if somebody had gone back and tried to say something that the wrestling fans would have just gotten louder. But it's always cool to see people excited about something and having a good time. I don't watch a ton of wrestling, but the showmanship and the energy and the performances and everything from it were really... I sat down and watched a couple of them. I also just want to say Honest John did nothing wrong, and those boos were completely unwarranted. The Maid Cafe always had something happening. It seemed like there was a line like non-stop. There were dance performances and things. I believe there were like little guest characters out in front sometimes too. Maid cafes aren't my particular area of expertise, but people were like clapping and really getting into it. So again, it's good to see people having a good time. For this section, I'm going to talk about the trip from my perspective. I'm also going to levy just a little bit of criticism. If it seems like I'm listing some criticism back to back, it is not because I had a negative experience at all. I would 100% endorse anybody coming to this convention, especially if it ran like it did this year, any other years. I was also treated with so much professional respect. I feel like I owe the journalistic integrity back to the convention, if that makes sense. I want to give the full picture, but overall, again, I endorse anybody checking this con out. Next morning, I gathered my gear, threw it in a clear bag I'd already kind of portioned out to make it easier to get through security. Also brought some pre-packaged food, because per con policy, you could only have packaged food that you brought in. In particular, the little beef and cheese sticks, like, kept me alive for most of this weekend. I hopped the bus, came in, could avoid having to park that way. And honestly, Vegas Transit is fine. It's so cheap, like, more people should take it. I heard the parking was kind of bad from people that drove, but I think that's a Vegas problem, not a con problem. But basically, if you're in a hotel, you have access to one of the bus lines or the monorail line. It's just a much easier way to get where you're going. I ended up in a line with some super cool folks who were able to answer a lot of my questions and talk about other conventions and experiences and stuff. I saw signs that said VIP and media. I assumed I knew what I was doing, right? Because I'm like, okay, cool, I'm picking up media, right? Hour and a half later, I learned I needed to be on the other side of the building for badge pickup. So I mentioned that I ran to the other side of the building pretty much, ended up in another line. 10 to 15 minutes after that, I learned I was in the wrong line again, and finally got to the VIP media badge pickup line. By the time I got inside, I saw the VIP badge pickup and assumed it was the correct line. Since all the other lines had VIP and media mixed together, I figured that was the right one. I get to the front finally, and then I get told I needed to go to a different line. I went to the general admission line because it was the only other one I saw with people in it. Waited through that one, and then partway through somebody came and grabbed me and said there was another line that was for media, and it was like super short. So I ended up getting in that one, but they ended up pulling me up front, just giving me my badge anyway. I asked a lot of people about their overall experience, and many said that picking up their badge early on Thursday went flawlessly, while anyone who picked it up on Friday was complaining about the organization. They were really confused. You know, I feel like maybe some better signage would help out a little bit with that. I'd also talked to some of the outside staff, and I got some conflicting answers on some things. I don't blame them at all. It was like really hectic, but a little uniformity in that might be helpful in the future. So once I'd gotten my badge, I attempted to walk in. It was like a side entrance thing, and a security guard stopped me, and he got super firm instantly and said it wasn't open yet. I tried to ask some follow up questions like, okay, cool, where should I go? That kind of thing. But he really didn't want to answer any of my questions. So I kind of just walked a short distance away, went around a corner, and then I got let in a completely different way. So I wasn't going to question it. I was just like, okay, cool. I guess I'm in now. There were big signs hanging over the relevant areas once you got onto the floor, which was a super great help. And it took me a bit to spot the staircase going upstairs, but once I got the layout down, we were good. There was a map on the website. It didn't give specifics on some of the locations, but it gave the overall layout. On that note, there were 3 ways to find out what was going on. You could look at the website, the pamphlet on the website, or on the app. The latter 2 were nearly comprehensive, but the website itself had a lot of partial information, and I was using it as my primary source at first, so it was kind of confusing. Once I found the other resources, I was good to go, but some slightly bigger flashing neon arrows would be super helpful to folks like me. Like, I was doing my best to do my research, but I probably just missed something too. But I know I talked to a few other people that had similar things. Other people were like, what, why don't you just get the app? Like, they already knew about it, so it very well could have been me missing it too. Okay, so this one's kind of significant for me. As for the food, there were food trucks outside, and the food trucks were fine. Like, when you hear food trucks, like, that's what they were. Um, Inside, though, they only had 2 options that I could find, really. And it was a pizza place or a burger place. Both of them were $16. The food was pre-cooked, sitting under heat lamps. It was really, like, kind of stale. I feel like with how much the folks who aren't expert budget travelers like me were spending, like, more reasonable food could have been a nice alternative. I know convention center food is always going to be a little pricey, but I was extremely grateful I brought in the packaged food that I mentioned earlier. On my first day there, I was practicing asking random strangers in cool clothes to take their pictures, because it's still something that's kind of new to me and is socially unacceptable in any other environment, but everyone was super friendly and chill. Like, nobody said no, so I was like, okay, I'm getting a little confidence about it and understanding the culture more. I did my hostel thing, got rested up as much as I can at a hostel, and headed back in Saturday. I will say that the lines and the check-in and all of that on Saturday looked to be going way smoother, so props. It seemed like whatever hiccups were happening before kind of got figured out. I mainly watched a lot of the esports, again, approached more cosplayers, watched the wrestling. I gave in and finally bought one of the tiny pizzas. And I hit up some of the cosplay meetups. That was one of the main things. I also caught a little bit of one of the hell of a panels. I wish I had just committed to recording all of it, but I just wanted to capture a variety of stuff. So at one point, I ended up backstage with the cast, and I didn't know who they were. I was just trying to get through to ask a question to somebody, but they started calling their names out and going on the stage. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll record a little bit of the people going on the stage. I recorded a little bit of the panel. I wish I had stuck around again for it, but I was trying to get a variety of stuff. When I was trying to get initially into that main stage panel area, there's another encounter with the security guard. There was an area where they didn't have curtains up, and so I figured it was just a badge checker like they had everywhere else. So I start to walk through, instantly kind of raised his voice, this isn't an entrance, whatever. Like, I'm not a security guard. I've never been a security guard. I don't envy some of what they have to deal with. So I can get, whatever. But then he saw my badge, and then he was like, oh, but you're allowed to go through, like, in the same tone of voice, and then just, like, stopped. So I was like, okay, that's weird. That's one of my things. I don't know what all goes into convention security guarding, but there were a couple of, I think the word hostile sounds a little dramatic, but kind of harsh encounters, with just really mundane things that I don't think needed to necessarily have that kind of energy. That's another thing, maybe. I don't know. I could be in the wrong on that. Maybe you need that kind of energy to stop important stuff from happening, like bad stuff. Anyway, I want to finish what I was talking about earlier with my background with cosplay. So I attempted to engage with the hobby a little bit, like mid 2010s, I guess. Had a Terry Bogard cosplay before it was cool. We're talking like 2015-ish, something like that. We're at a couple cons in Texas and Portland. Didn't necessarily put like a ton of work into it. I just tried to make it look, as good as I could with what I had, basically. When I covered the Las Vegas Open earlier this year, I wanted to make sure to highlight the cosplay, I guess, tournament or whatever they had there. It's not the main focus of that convention. It's like 99% tabletop gaming, pretty much. But I figured it would be a fun thing to break up the pacing of the video, and it's just something that I thought would be cool to watch. So, amazingly, covering a cosplay event is different than covering a tabletop gaming tournament, which I have so much more experience with. It was something that kind of, sparked a little fire in me that I wanted to see more about it. I was asking the judges questions and things like that. That was one thing I was excited about with Level Up Expo was I would get to, see more cosplay and stuff. So I was all set for the cosplay masquerade. I was going to go all in on it. I made sure to get in early. I think I got in like 15 minutes before they started letting people in or something. I set up a tripod and some stuff to the side and fully intended to record the full thing. I have the full thing. I will upload it at some point. And I was glad that I had recorded some of a panel earlier because it gave me a little bit of insight on kind of where to be and the best ways to do it and sound quality and all that jazz. Basically, once everything started from the beginning, like the crowd was wild. It started with the event crew doing some performances, and I just got sucked in like right away in a way I did not expect. Combination of artistry, like passion, I guess expression, just all of it made me feel things. Not somebody who never feels anything, but I'm also someone who, like, I've only ever cried at one movie ever, and I was already having an awful day that day. Just in general, I keep a level head, and I respond to most situations probably a little too rationally. That entirely went out the window, and I lost my cool and got a little choked up at how into it everyone was. The crowd, the performers, the whole presentation, I was just awestruck. I'm going to prioritize cons with more cosplay events over others moving forward. Just, I don't want to say purely based on this experience, but it's definitely a catalyst. Sunday was a bit more of the same, trying to talk as many cool folks as I could, enjoying some more rounds in the free play arcade, watch some more esports. Also watched some wildcard being played at one of the stages, and signed up for the beta on Steam as soon as I got home. It's a MOBA with like creature summoning, tower defense, and deck building mechanics. Characters were super bright colors, which is always a plus for me. I recommend anybody, like if that sounds vaguely interesting, go ahead and check it out. But it seemed pretty cool, and the crew behind it obviously really cared about their project, which is always nice. You know that they're going to put their heart and soul into the game then. I had a personal quest to get a selfie with Justin Wong and caught him partway through the day outside of the commentator's curtain. I think this was the moment that I kind of let myself be done. I had 50 gigs of like footage in nearly 4 hours. I was fulfilled in ways that I would not have expected prior. I kind of just, I think, like clocked out at 3:30 and called it good. Went back, grabbed a couple of 40s, chilled at the hostel, and I had my flight back on Monday. I didn't realize I would be so kind of worn out, but those were a really fun few days. And it's what, like Friday now, I'm still missing it. People in the Facebook groups and group chats and stuff are all talking about how they're missing it. I didn't expect to walk away with the sense of community that I did, but I am extremely glad that I went and experienced this, and again, encourage all of you to do it. In short, just go to this fucking con. It was awesome. They put on a hell of a show. And I'll hope they'll have me back for the next one so I can experience it all over again. Made friends I didn't expect to. I got to have and relive some amazing experiences, and I just cannot recommend it enough. Hope to see all of you next year. I want to give a big thanks to everyone who made it this far in the video. Again, if you like what you see and hope to see more of it in the future, go ahead and subscribe. It means a ton to me. There's a pet project of mine that I want to shill for a little bit. So I've designed a free-to-play virtual pet-themed board game called WeeLingz. In it, you watch your Weeling grow from infant to adult with unique forms and compete in contests along the way for trophies. No two instances of play are going to be the same. The mechanics are designed to be intuitive, turns are simultaneous so you don't have to wait around for the other player to finish a 20-minute turn before you get to do anything, and it's designed to be equal parts easy to learn for players who just want to enjoy the cute aesthetics, and also competitive if you want to get more crunchy with the actual game mechanics. If you like strategic gameplay or cute critters, this might be for you. Everything is free to download at the site linked below. I plan on running open play and tournaments at conventions coming up and having a leaderboard and whatnot, so we've got some ambitions. There's some other projects I can't talk about with it yet, but if that sounds interesting, feel free to check that out too. Until next time, folks.